evolving digital landscape, for your business to thrive, you must adapt or die. Welcome to Marketing in the Age of AI, the podcast helping you harness the power of AI and marketing tools to revitalize and grow your business. And now here's your host, marketing expert and author of Authentic Marketing in the Age of AI, Emmanuel Rose.
Well, welcome to this episode of Marketing in the Age of AI. In this episode, we get to talk about one of the best ways possible to create authentic content in this crazy time with an avalanche of content, and that is in podcast hosting and podcast guesting. And I have an expert in both areas of that, Rena McGill. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Emmanuel. Appreciate you having me here.
Yeah, I am so excited to talk to you today about all things podcasting. So I'm really appreciative that you took the time.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.
Well, give us a little introduction and background on Podcast Easy.
Absolutely. We are a podcast consulting and production agency, and we are absolutely focused on helping creators at all levels, whether you are new to the market or whether you have an existing show that maybe isn't getting the results that you're looking for, and helping you really use your voice to leverage your messaging. Something I love every single day and gets my feet out of bed and on the floor and running to create new content working with folks.
I love it. And how long have you been doing this in the podcast world?
Well, the company's been around about 3.5 years. However, our team, and I am quite humbled by this, have been in the game for about 23 years. So I guess I'd say we know what we're doing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I have an experienced production team, and what have you seen that's changed just even over the last 2 years of podcasting?
It's so interesting. There's been a trend over the last year, particularly, and it's referred to commonly as the professionalism of podcasting. And while that may seem like it's, lights, camera, action, and all that's formal, what it really refers to is that it's not like it was when the pandemic kicked in.
Sure.
People found themselves moved out of their offices in front of a at-home desk, and either figuring out how they're going to continue communication with their corporate office, or more frequently, how they are going to jump into the gig economy. And many of them here, I'll just show you, they pick up their phones, they create content, gets thrown out on the internet, and it's a little bit like the hoping the oatmeal will stick against the wall situation. That's no longer the case. There is a great deal of competition for quality content. One of the things that I find absolutely fascinating is that the number of podcasters have shrunk pretty dramatically, while the number of listeners has skyrocketed.
Oh, interesting.
In fact, there are about 450 million listeners globally, and that number is expected to grow about 10% per year. So what does that mean? It's content's king. I don't know how to say it any simpler than that.
And it has been for quite a few years.
Yes, but the expectation has changed. We now live in a world where people want to understand what's in it for me.
Sure.
If the content that you're delivering is not something that creates value for them, well, they have the power of the dial and they can change that channel and go to someone else who is going to address their pain point and create an ROI on their time, which is their greatest asset. So that's the biggest thing over the last year, and we must address that. And
Right.
that's where the term professionalism of podcasting comes
I
from.
love
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
it fits into marketing in that, we start with an avatar, we have a client journey, then we start to build content for that avatar, right? And so
That's right.
podcasters can't just jump on and start talking about their breakfast and expect to build an audience, if I'm hearing you correctly.
That's correct. That's correct. And you must be communicating the why of your subject matter, right?
Yeah.
Uh, if you've probably heard of things like show notes, right? And trailers that become your fishing line to bring people back to your content.
Right.
And it's those components, among many others, that tell people why they need to be tuning in. And interesting statistic, it takes about 7 listens for someone to push the subscribe and follow button.
Wow.
So, and oddly enough, a lot of podcasts today with new podcasters, they last about 7 to 9 episodes, which is kind of sad. Yeah,
Yeah, so there's a little lack of perseverance for the people who are starting them, I guess.
there is indeed. There is indeed.
Well, what are 2 or 3 things that you would recommend to somebody if they were thinking about starting a podcast and how they would get kind of wrap their head around what it takes?
Who's your target audience? A lot of people, oddly enough, when you ask people who their target audience is, you'll hear everybody.
Right. Classic. Yeah.
And yeah, it is classic, but unfortunately, it can mean the death of your show. If you don't understand who the people are that care about the service that you're providing, then you're missing your target.
Yeah.
And then you also need to understand where your audience lives. Um, One of the things that maybe a lot of people don't know is that YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world.
Right.
And so I have people respond to me and say, "Yeah, well, I'm running content on YouTube, or I'm going to just put a show on YouTube, and that's going to get me to my audience." Well, the reality is you have to remember that that is a singular platform. And if you only live on YouTube, you are going to miss a large range of your audience. So this is why we talk to people about the power of podcasting and building that human connection and then leveraging it. So when you podcast, it facilitates that. It facilitates relationship building when you really lean in and talk about content that matters. And then you distribute it through a hosting platform and your RSS feed, get it
Right.
out to 50 locations, including YouTube,
Right.
right?
Yeah. It is. It's funny. It's multi-channel. I mean, we've that was such a big concept about a decade ago, right? Multi-channel marketing,
Yes.
and we do have such a dispersed distribution network of every piece of content now that you have
Mhm.
to really be engaged in multi-channel activities. So
Yes.
I got you. So you got to have a target market. You got to go where they are and get the content to them easily.
Yes.
What else do you recommend for somebody to think about before they start a podcast?
Um, Look, it's so interesting. I've met many people who, the minute I meet them, I think, wow, this person has a magnetic personality. They're very camera friendly, and they're going to do well with the podcast because they seem to understand their content, right? And then they get in front of the camera, and which is particular
Yeah.
it's particularly interesting
Yeah.
when, we're living in the age of Zoom,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So, they suddenly are a deer in headlights, And I tell people, I encourage clients, think of a show as if you're inviting somebody into your office, sitting in an easy chair, pulling up an ottoman, throwing their feet up there, leaning in, and having an authentic conversation.
Nice. Yep.
Don't be somebody you're not. Don't suddenly turn into this big TV personality and
Right.
be fake.
Yep.
Or also don't, sink into your chair and be a mouse.
Yep.
Be who you are. Be authentic, because I'll tell you what, people are tired of the billboards on the information highway. They
Yeah.
want authenticity.
I mean, we see that, right? I mean, Joe Rogan's easy to say, here's a
Oh, yeah.
guy, he just sits around and he's sounds like he has a 95 IQ, but he has the most interesting people in the world on his show. And he is 100% just Joe, right?
Yes. Yes. And I think the other thing I would point out here is, first of all, podcasting is about setting you up as a subject matter expert and a thought leader, right?
Yep.
If you've got a business, if you've got a brand, or even if you're an individual with a passion, you've come a long way to get there. You've spent a lot of human collateral and a lot of money in many cases to get to where you are today. So don't ruin it by getting on camera and doing it the wrong way, doing it incorrectly. Be prepared. If you're going to have a co-host or you're going to have guests, make sure they show up prepared.
Right.
Have your camera, have a good quality camera, have good quality lighting. Maybe make sure everybody brushes their hair, takes a shower.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. It's a performance. Yeah.
It is in a way, because if you are doing a video podcast, there's certain protocols. You get up and show up. And if you have a good microphone, for Pete's sake, right?
Yeah.
Because if you as the host have great audio equipment and your guest shows up and they're speaking, 5 feet away from the microphone,
Right. Yeah.
It's going to impact the audio quality of the show. End
Sure.
of story. Yeah.
Well,
So,
well, what about for people who are like not ready to host their own thing? What's kind of your entreaty into testing the waters with guesting? I mean, is that something that you recommend for people?
I do recommend that. While Podcast Easy doesn't get involved in guest hosting, there are a lot of very good services out there that help people get on shows that are relevant to them. Now, I'll tell you what a pet peeve of mine is.
Okay.
I'll sit in networking groups and I'll hear a podcaster say, "Hey, I've got a podcast. Anybody want to be on my show as a guest? Send me a DM."
Right.
It's like, really? Look, this is about delivering content that's going to create value for the listening audience. End of story. If you just bring a warm body onto your show,
right,
you are completely defeating the purpose of your show. So do it thoughtfully, curate your guests, and allow them or set them up to come in so that they are supporting your content for that particular episode.
Yeah, I like that. I like the structure and the thoughtfulness of that. And it's challenging. It takes work to be able to approach it that way. And so that's why it's great that the work that you do for people who maybe don't have internal staff or don't have the experience to set it up on their own, and they're able to outsource that and get the support they need to think about it correctly and then execute it correctly.
That's correct. One of the things that we do here at Podcast Easy is we recognize that there are no two podcasters alike. And we believe that it's very important, if you're going to start a show, that you lay the bricks, you pour cement in those bricks, you build a foundation, and you are equipped to build a quality show. And so, why would you not want to work with a professional who can at least help you set your foundation? And where you go from there, that's up to you. But
I love it.
yeah.
And so, are there some new products or offerings that you're developing right now that you can talk about?
Well, our focus is podcast Smart Launch, of course, and then clients come in and we offer full consulting services and also post production and editing. We are close to launching a mini course
Oh, wow.
that will be cost effective for podcasters at any level. That's probably going to be available in October, is the expectation. And for us, I'll tell you what, we are solely focused on podcast education. Everything else is a bonus because when you understand the components to build a successful show, then we've done our job right. And that's very important, very important.
Yeah, that's cool. There is such a interesting thing about the lifespan of an average podcast and the number of people listening. So I think that's fascinating. And like you were saying, we're in that time where it's like the professionals are rising and the people that
Mhm.
didn't want to take it seriously are closing it down.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
uh,
We're living in a different world and the expectations are growing, right? And you alluded to Joe Rogan. I hear it a lot of times. I want to be Joe Rogan.
there's only one.
There's only one.
Yeah.
And we highly recommend people to go out and look at successful podcasts and pay attention to their format, how they show up, how they deliver their content, the level of enthusiasm behind that content,
Right.
and how it is for your show, you're going to get your listeners to start leaning in and engaging. And I will say this, one of the things that is very important when you build out your show content, short clips that can be used for marketing are really, really powerful.
Yeah.
So take those curated short clips from every episode, throw them out on social media as your fishing line, and bring people back to where you monetize. Coaches, consultants, folks who have a product to sell, bring people back to where that all of that content resides. And now you've got an ecosystem that you're starting to build around your content.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, do you think that there's any industry where podcasting is not an appropriate way to brand build?
Oh, sure. You know, I'll mention this. I had a client a couple of years back who was a financial consultant, and I thought
Okay.
this is not a good category.
Yeah.
He surprised us. He built an entire brand around financial consulting and investment, and he has done remarkably well. So I think the people that wouldn't fit for a podcast, to your point, would be perhaps somebody who are service providers, like, contractors, electrical people,
Okay.
housekeepers, some people who don't have a message that is going to resonate with their listening audience where they're going to learn.
Right.
People are looking to learn or grow or have an emotional connection with your content.
That's yeah, I like that, and it kind of triggers me too to be thinking about like the kind of international markets and how you would develop content that would resonate, like in South America or in Africa, right, where there's the big youth movement who are educating themselves, and how we would do that. Any
Well, look,
thoughts?
I think it's very powerful. Technology is global. People have access to the internet in places you wouldn't expect them to have it,
Yeah.
right? And content resonates no matter the language. It just does. And if we negate some of these countries where you might just make an assumption,
right,
where you're not going to get reach, think again. Think again. We live in a global marketplace, a global content forum, right?
Yeah.
And yeah. Don't make assumptions. We all know what it means when you assume.
That's true. Well, I do love it. I found that both podcast guesting and hosting has been an amazing content generator, and it's been powerful that way. Also, as a way to meet people and have conversations with people I wouldn't be able to otherwise. So it's been very powerful for me.
It's a great conversation opener.
Yeah.
It really is. And I'll tell you what, it works like third-party verification. It's very interesting. So when you drop your shows on YouTube or you drop your shows on your website under another tab, it simply lifts up your other content. It's kind of like people who are becoming authors in these books that maybe have quotes from 200 entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
It's still like a third-party verification.
Right.
And when you have a show, it tells people that you are a subject matter expert or a thought leader. It's a very powerful medium if you use it correctly.
Yeah, I like that. And I like how sharp you are on the tactics, strategy and tactics on how to use it as a marketing tool. So
thank you.
I appreciate your thinking and your time today, Rena.
Yeah.
Great conversation. And how do people get in touch with you if they want to talk podcasting?
They can drop in our website at podcastez.com, and comprehensive information, including podcast smart launch and all of our post-production tools. Love to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, it's well worth it with somebody with your experience and ability to make a podcast a valuable marketing asset. So thank you very much.
That.
Yeah, it's good to
you
see
are welcome.
You. All right, we'll see you again soon.
All right. Thanks, Emmanuel.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to Marketing in the Age of AI. Be sure to subscribe wherever you heard this podcast so you never miss a future episode. Your copy of Authentic Marketing in the Age of AI is available at Amazon.com or EmmanuelRose.com. You can also connect with Emmanuel on LinkedIn. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you.